There's a two-part documentary out there called The History of Money that goes into that whole system as well, and what it really homes in on is what happened with the Rothschilds and how the whole system that we operate on at the moment, the debt-based system, is a Rothschild system. And it's being squeezed and collapsed at the moment by themselves. Right, they're trying to do it in such a way that what they're aiming to do is kill off the middle class. What they're also, as you know, these people are eugenicists. So while they're doing that economically, they're actually wanting to reduce the world's population by 80 to 90%. So that's another whole element that we are being confronted with all the time. The whole swine flu pandemic is part of their scheme. And they're using that to try and divert us from what is happening to them with this present system. And what you have within the New World Order, you have different factions that are actually vying with each other for a different system. And some time ago, when Bush Jr. was in, he wanted to bring in the Amero, which was in Canada, America, and Mexico. And the G20 laughed him out. They actually slow clapped him out of the room. They wouldn't let him do it. But what they are trying to bring in, the New World Order are trying to bring in through Gordon Brown, is a world system. Now, so you have a collapsing system that is already squeezing us and killing us and putting us in the situation we're in, and they want to bring in another system that they say is going to save the day, and it's going to screw us even more, because that's what's really going to kill off the middle class or anybody with any kind of independence. So neither of these systems are good for us at all. And you could think, is there a God? You know, is there anybody with any wisdom, any sense? And there is, right? And this is the system I want to talk to you about, because I never hear activists speak about this. And it's called Nesara, Nesara. If you Google the history of Nesara, you'll come across a whole other scene that started in America in the 80s, when farmers started to have their land taken from them en masse. And they got together to try and see what they could do about this, and they discovered there was a cabal of bankers, developers, politicians, insiders that were doing this. Now it turned out that some of the people that were having their land taken from them were also military men. And being good strategists, they came up, what they said was, we should take this through the legal system. And they took it to the Supreme Court. And these guys, the military men, sat in the Supreme Court in their uniforms as gold badgers, and they watched the judges, because they knew that the judges had to vote in their favour, had to back them up. And as it turned out, the judges, the Supreme Court, did vote in their favour. But what they discovered when they were examining this case was what we came across earlier in the Aaron Russo film, what happened to the American economy in 1913, and between 1913 and 1933, that America became a corporation, was bankrupt and became a corporation. Now this was news to them. And they put a D-notice on everybody that nobody could talk about it, because they wanted to come up with a solution. And they sent a committee away to find out what solution they could come up with. And they came up with Nesara, the National Economic and Recovery Act. And what it basically means is that America would go back to the original constitution. They would take the control of money back away from the bankers, and they would produce the money themselves, the government. Now, this was actually agreed upon and signed off by Clinton when he was in power, and was meant to come in as an agreement by the Clinton administration, where the government of the day would step down, the legal system would step down, and all the politicians would step down by agreement, right? and it was meant to come about in 1998. And of course they wouldn't do it, right? Now what they use, if you Google the history of Nesara, one of the things you see is photographs of the big banners being driven around Washington, announce Nesara, because they weren't allowed to talk about it, but they were trying to get people to actually look into this, because this is to be the saving grace, not only of America, but actually of the world banking system. Now when you look into this in more detail, you discover that it goes way back into the early history of banking. And in Europe, there was a guy called Saint Germain. Now, look up this guy again, Google his history. He popped up all across Europe, and he actually turned up in America when they were writing the Bill of Rights. And he was said to be a wise man of the time, and he has had a massive influence right across our history. And because he realized what the bankers were doing when the Rothschilds were setting up the debt-based system, he went around, he had a lot of influence in Europe, and he went around all of the rich families, and he got money from them, and he put it in a trust that came to fruition in the year 2000. Now that money, along with lots of other gold and silver that has been buried all around the world, is the money that is going to be used to back the Nesara system that won't only cover America, it will cover the world. And it means a basket of currencies that will all be based on gold and silver. And now you should look into this, because that to me is it's a very complex story, and it's a good story for humanity, because what they're trying to do is move the logjam out of the way that these guys have posed for us for such a long time. They're not only strangling our economic system, our social system, our educational system, but our very consciousness is being kept back because of what these guys are trying to do. Now, if you understand yourself as a multi-dimensional being, you realize that they say that people have their price. When you realize yourself as a multi-dimensional being, you realize the game they're playing, they've already lost it. The New World Order have already lost it. The Illuminati have already lost it. And these guys, when I see the youth of today coming up with this clarity, they represent a wave of people that are going to make the changes that have been desired for so long by so many people. But the history, we need to go into it. We need to understand the ancient history, and I'm talking about ancient history, you're talking about going back millennia. What are the controls that have been on man? We need to understand that, to understand what's happening today, and to see the vision that we can have for the future. Because this Nesara system will break the logjam, but we are going to move into a totally different paradigm when the logjam is broken and all the restrictions are lifted from us. So I would suggest to you, look into this, do your own research, and be open-minded, and realize these guys have been playing and getting us to play a very limited game, but their day is over. Okay, so there you go.